Warning: you may see some unsafe practices and safety precautions being ignored. Make sure you always read and understand all safety guidelines that came with your tools. In other words, do not try this at home. So to start out, this is going to be the tapping drill bit, and this is the bar stock. Uh, this is either 5/16 or an 8 mm uh, steel bar stock. Both of them, the measurements are close enough together that it really doesn't matter which one you use. Now, I've been working on this piece already, and it's already got the center bore started on it, but I've cut off a piece since then. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on and drill a bit further so that I can get another piece. Uh, Once you get the hole centered and started on there, it's best to go ahead and keep that same hole going. So I'll try to drill as far as I can go, and then cut off the piece that I need. That way, after I cut off the length that I need, then it's already started for the next piece I'm going to need. So I cut a groove in that. That's for the tap that's going to make it a hobbed gear. And I'm trying to mark it with the calipers at the proper length right here. So this is the parting tool, and like I said in my other video, the parting tool on this machine using the quick change post, it needs to be the machine needs to be run in reverse. Uh, this is not ideal, but it does get the job done. And there is my plug, my blank for the hobbed gear I'm going to be making. So take the bar stock out. We're going to go ahead and clean up that surface right there. Take off that little knurling, that extra little nub. Now this is such a small piece that I got to be working up against that guard. Now it's supposed to be keep you from getting that close to your to the actual lathe. So working on that. Now take the file, and I'm just putting a small chamfer on that edge right there. All right. Let's make sure that center bore is cleared out after I did that. Alright, that's one of the good things about this quick change tool post though, is that I've got a preset jig that I use for the knurling on this, use for the hobbing. I made this out of 1/4 inch aluminum stock. It's all bolted together with just a drill bit as a center axle. Let it spin on. Now, I don't bearings don't fit in there for it to ride on, so I'm using washers, which I got to line up the washers each time. Now the good thing about these quick change uh, pieces is that they have an adjustment knob on the top to get your height set. So this jig is already set to the ideal position. That way it gets the tap lined up with that groove that I put in it earlier. Now this is a 1032 tap, same tap that I use for tapping the heater block. And you got to make sure all the threads on this are clean enough, that way it doesn't start skipping over any sections. And that's clean enough. Now, since I can run this machine forward and reverse, forward is the position that I want to run this at, because it working on this side, it's going to push that my workpiece down. Now if I ran it in reverse, it's going to push it up, and that'll move my Hobbed section down the length of it. Now you don't want that. So since the tap is going to be pushing down while it's cutting on this edge, you want to make sure it's lubricated. That way it has something to glide on. Now if it has too much friction, it's not going to start spinning on its own. So you kind of have to work it back and forth, like I'm doing right here. That helps get the threads cutting in a uniform pattern. After you get it once time around, then you can just leave it in one spot and just move it closer, just a tiny bit at a time, till it starts hobbing all the way around it.
Better them than me.
Now I'm trying to make sure I don't lose any of those washers taking that out. And that's the Hobbed section of it. And go ahead and work on the tap. Now I believe this is an M2 tap. So working with a tap this small, you got to work slow, especially in steel. If this was aluminum, I probably could have powered through it. But you got to make sure that your tap is nice and clean and well lubricated, and back it out as often as possible to clean out all the threads that you've already cut. Almost through. Clean it off one more time. Alright, I'm through. Go ahead and work it back and forth. Make sure that the threads are cleaned. Clean them off before you back it out. makes to ensure that it stays clean. The threads are still clean when you back it out. That way you don't have to clean them again later. Now we just got to work on getting the final length. Now the specs say 8.8 millimeters. Whenever I cut this, it was a little off, so again, try to take off a couple millimeters off the length. Now the hop section, it's a little far down in that one position, but that's nothing a washer, whenever I assemble it, can't fix. So that first attempt only took off about a millimeter. Now, working with such a small piece, trying to get perpendicular inside those jaws, it might take one or two attempts, especially since we're not going all the way in. Alright, one more pass. Now I'm using the parting tool to do this. I don't really recommend using that. Use the proper tools. But I was able to get the final length good enough. It's within tolerance, so 8.82 is good enough.